Hi, welcome to Christy's Couch. Exciting, isn't it? My name is Christy Lucasiak, and I am your illustrious host of Christy's Couch, where we all kind of sit back, relax, learn something new, maybe commiserate together, bitch a little bit. You know, it's kind of like having a cup of coffee with your bestie or, I don't know, a glass of wine when you really need it. I am here for the people, and what can I say? I'm a giver. Well, hi. Sorry, I needed a quick drink of my tea or a quick sip. Welcome. What a week we had last week, didn't we? I mean, I'm not an overly political person, but I would be remiss not to bring up the insanity that happened in our world last week. Truth be told, I talk to young people from all over the world, and I'm a little embarrassed that they think that what went down at the Capitol is representative of this country. Anyone else feel that way? I mean, listen, you don't have to have the same political affiliation or the same views to agree that that was insanity. And okay, so here's the tea on that. The day that the coup went down at the Capitol, I actually wasn't really on social media that day. I know, weird. And I wasn't really like looking at my news stations or, you know, when you log on to Yahoo or whatever, you get the news feed. I was in the middle of launching my program, Adulting 101. So I was very focused on, you know, talking to people and posting what I needed to post, but I wasn't scrolling. And so I heard like little Twitters of, you know, hey, something's going on at the Capitol, but I wasn't in it like the rest of the world. So I didn't watch it unfold in real time. And I didn't really know much about it until the following day. So judge me all you want, call me unpatriotic, call me dumb because I didn't know what was happening. But I think that ignorance is kind of bliss for this situation because no clue. I had no idea. And then I was reading it and I was like, is this real life? Because it almost felt like a Saturday Night Live skit. Truly. But that's all I'm going to say. I mean, I'm going to keep my political views to myself because I think one of the beauties of living in America is that we're all entitled to our own opinions. And I think everybody's entitled to their own opinion. However, I do think if you have a large platform and I do think that there are some things that have gone down socially that it is our responsibility as a person with a large platform to speak up because these are humanitarian issues, not political. But that's all I'm going to say. Let's get back into some lighter, more fun things. Okay, so let's see. Clara went back to school this week full time. Like our school district really didn't do the whole, what's it called? Satellite learning or learning from home or kind of that hybrid system. They went back full throttle in the fall, and she had 2 weeks off when someone in her class had COVID. We all had to quarantine. But other than that, they've really just been back full time. But right before Thanksgiving, some things went down. And so they have been, satellite learning from home, however you want to call it, whatever it's called in your area, since Thanksgiving. And she's been driving me batshit crazy. I love Clara. I love both of my kids, but I think every mother out there can agree when they are home 24/7, they get bored and I have shit to do. So constantly being like, hey, blah, 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 she's bored and she wants my attention, which I can't blame her. So I'm not sad that she's back at school. Plus they need like that social interaction. Wear your mask, keep your distance, but go to school. I mean, at least that's how my area is. So I'm like leaned into it. I know other areas are a little bit different. And if my area was one of those big hot spots or hot zones, I probably would feel differently. But for right now, that's how I feel. What else is happening in Casa de Lucasiak? Let's see. Oh my God. Okay. So here's the deal with my older child. So Chloe, I swear, she finds strays everywhere in her life, whether it be people or pets. I mean, she has the biggest heart on the planet and she just wants a little friend. She does. She wants a little friend. So 2 years ago, my friend who fosters dogs found this little dog, and she had messaged me and she was like, Christy, I think I found the right dog for you. And we went through this whole thing where I had to fly out to LA literally the next day with both of my kids to meet the dog. So somebody else didn't adopt the dog, to see if we wanted the dog. And Chloe is like, this is my soulmate. So we adopted him, and with the intent that Barnaby was going to be close. And she was like, I'll take him. He'll live with me in LA. He'll be my perfect companion. And then she realized, this was 2 years ago, she realized that she had to live on campus for one semester of school. And so she's like, well, I can't take a dog. Can he live at your house? And we're like, of course he can live here. So he lived here. And then, I mean, I like animals, but I've never been one of those people that are like, these are my soulmates and I love a pet and just, I'm going to dress it in a sweater and wear it in a papoose. No, I've never been that person. But now I freaking love this dog. I don't know what is my problem. I don't know if it's like empty nest syndrome. I know Clara's still here, but you know what I mean? I have no idea, but I'm obsessed with Barnes and I love him and I snuggle him and he is my favorite little thing. And yes, I love Maggie. She was abused from her previous owners. So she's weird when we try to pet her and touch her. She's a little bit like, she gets nervous and it makes her panic. So you have to like pet her head and give her space. Maggie's my black lab greyhound. She's 14. So she's very old for a big dog. So then Barnes became like this little snuggly guy. So then about 3 or 4 months ago, Chloe was obsessed with the idea of getting a cat. Now, keep in mind, Chloe is deathly allergic to cats, okay? But she was like, I'm going to get a cat and I'll just get used to it so my allergies will be fine. And so it went through this whole thing. She was going to adopt this special type of cat. And one day she texted me and she was like, I have to fly to New York to get my cat. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, he's a special breed. And he comes from this, whatever. He's a designer cat. And I said, how much is this cat? And she was like, $3,000. And I was like, Chloe, there are cats living under every overpass in LA. Go get a dumpster cat or something. And she was like, no, this is my soulmate cat. He's not. So that one kind of went to the wayside. She forgot about the cat. But then in November, her friend found 3 dumpster cats in LA. And Chloe was like, these are my children. So she brings these cats home. Her friend took one and she ended up with 2. And they were infested with bugs and bleeding and just teeny weeny little babies that needed bottle fed. We don't know what happened to their mom. And, you know, she spent all of this time like nursing these little kitties. And the one little kitty didn't make it. But then the other kitty is this wild version of a cat. He's like a kitten and he's crazy and he's wild and he's fun and funny and all of those things. But like I said, Chloe is horribly allergic. So she brought the cat home for Christmas and Chloe left here a couple weeks ago. And if you guessed that the cat now lives at my house, you would have guessed right. You win because now I have a freaking cat. I love him though. He's really sweet and I wasn't a cat person. So again, I don't know. You know how like your allergies and your taste change as you get older? Maybe my like preferences change and I love little animals. So our dog is Barnes and then our cat is Noble because my kids are freaking nerds. So we have Barnes and Noble. And I do love the cat. So I'm sorry. My name is Christy and I'm a cat lover now. Okay, well, that's enough about me because I'm sure that's boring, but I am so excited to announce today's guest because it's something that I'm really, really obsessed with. And I don't use that word a lot because I feel like every influencer in the world's like, I'm obsessed, but I'm really, truly obsessed with this. And there's this huge cultural shift that everyone is kind of obsessed with this. So I think you guys are going to love this guest. So my guest today is renowned astrologer Jade Luna. And you can check him out at his website, asterianastrology.com, or on Facebook, which is facebook.com/asterianastrology. And I will link it in the show notes. But okay, so Jade, we all like astrology, right? You know, we're like, I'm a Pisces or I'm a Virgo. And we're like, I'm such a Virgo. And we say all of these things and we kind of assign personality traits based on our signs. I think everyone in the world is kind of like on this astrology train right now, which I do the same. My kids are obsessed with it. Like I buy them little things like Claire's a Leo, Chloe's a Gemini, which Gemini, okay. Sorry, Gemini, but you know, she really does have two personalities. But what's interesting is last year I was talking to a friend who's from LA and she said, I have this amazing astrologer that you should talk to. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm always like, if you have somebody that's an astrologer, a psychic, a medium, an energy healer, whatever, I'm always like, I'll try it. Sure. I'll try anything once for the most part. I won't jump off of a mountain, but I will try things. So I made an appointment. It was at the end of December last year, and I had a call with Jade. And he explained that he does not practice Western astrology. Western astrology is kind of what we all talk about or think about when we say astrology, like that Pisces, Virgo, Leo, that's Western astrology. He practices Eastern astrology, which he will tell you is the oldest form of astrology. And it's fascinating to hear how it all came to be, which he does explain in the interview. So you will love that. And so when I spoke to him last December, he was really specific with some things that were going to happen with me throughout the year. And this past December, just, you know, last month, I went back and re-listened to that original reading because I think sometimes when you talk to an astrologer, you're like, oh, I don't know, that doesn't make sense. But I went back and re-listened to it and it was insane how many things he said that were dead on. And it was like very specific things, but he's not saying like, Mark will say this sentence to you. He said things like, you will sign 2 contracts. And then I went back and I looked and I was like, oh my God, I signed 2 contracts. Just very specific things like that. And it was really wild to see. But then this is probably what made me stop dead in my tracks. So in 2019, Jade predicted the pandemic. He predicted it so accurately that he had like the weeks or the months where the virus would spike. I can't explain how wild that is. And he'll explain to you how he knew that. So I think you guys are going to love this interview. And just a little side note, some people who Jade has worked with, I mean, the list is so impressive. He has like Rashida Jones and Cheryl Lee and Courtney Cox, Regina Hall, and they have amazing things to say about him. I now schedule readings with him probably twice a year because he does different types of readings. And I just kind of listen and he sends the recordings. And then I go back through and listen to them at later times. And it is so fun. And I just think this interview is amazing and really insightful. So I'm really, really excited for you to hear it. So I'm going to stop talking and let's get into it. Let's meet Jade Luna. Well, I am so excited to welcome Jade Luna to the podcast. Welcome to Christy's Couch, Jade. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Okay, so a little bit of a backstory, which I already talked about, but I definitely want to just touch on it. So you and I spoke for the first time in December of 2019. And it's interesting because you send all of your recordings to people that you read. And I just went back and re-listened to that first recording or that first session that you and I had. And it's wild how on the nose you were about so many things. And I know you hear that all the time, right?
I do.
You do. Yes.
Which I attribute that to my system. I'd love to take all the credit for it, but I do an incredibly unique system of astrology that I give the credit to that.
I know. Well, here's the thing. Okay, so I feel like in 2020, or in this day and age, I should say, I think a lot of people are, you know, they would say, I'm obsessed with astrology. Yeah, I think more than ever before we see, you know, the typical astrological signs everywhere. There's t-shirts and pictures and posters and everyone attributes like, I'm a giant bitch. I'm a Gemini because I have 2 sides. You know, everyone's always like leaning into that common knowledge of astrology. and what do you call that? Western astrology? Is that how you refer to it?
We call it Western or tropical astrology.
Oh, why tropical? That's interesting.
Tropical means calendar-based. The tropics were how they used to create calendars in ancient time, and this is probably lead you right into the conversation. Western astrology isn't technically connected to the stars in the sky at all.
Okay.
It's an old calendar from the past.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that does lead me right into my next question, which is, I think, fascinating because tell us a little bit, and I have more questions about you before we get into our big predictions for 2021, but tell me a little bit about the type of astrology that you do because it's very fascinating.
This is the ancient priest system that was used by the Babylonians and the Egyptians and the Greeks. And the 27 signs, which are pretty much only used by Asteri and my system, and also in India under the term nakshatras. This was the priest caste system, and the priests kept this system away from the public. They wanted the 12 signs learning about the public, or the public learning about the 12 signs, but they didn't want them learning about the 27 signs. They wanted that kept for people that had earned wisdom.
Okay, I was going to say why.
The 12 should be for the public.
Okay. So it was the wisest people.
Certain information to be kept entirely to the priest caste. That still goes on to India to this day.
Interesting. Okay. So what made you, what led you to be, do you call yourself an astrologer? Or, I mean, what?
Oh, yeah, no, we're actually we believe we own the title of the word astrologer more than what Western astrologers, because Western astrologers do not follow the stars in the sky at all, where we do.
Okay.
So we believe we are the stargazers out there.
So you are the stargazer. So by me calling you an astrologer, that is actually accurate. Okay, cool.
We study the stars where Western astrology does not follow the stars. They follow an old Northern Hemisphere calendar.
Well, I think it makes more sense to follow the stars because the world changes and rotates and shifts and the heavens move. And
there you go.
You know, so that makes sense to me. I never realized that the old system or the Western system is calendar based. So now everything that I've ever known about astrology has been blown up. But I'm just kind of joking because when you and I started speaking, everything you told me made sense. And it also, again, like I said, it was insane, the things you said. So I can personally attest to you telling me things in December, and I watched it align for myself throughout the year. Even things that when you initially said to me, I was like, oh, I have no idea what that means. And I probably would not have recognized the connection had I not gone back and just listened recently, like as an end of the year tie up. And it was crazy, the things that I wasn't expecting and how they fell into exactly what you said, which leads me to something that you and I have discussed that I think the listeners need to know about because it's actually astounding. And that is that, and I don't want to put a certain date on it, but I know before 2020 started, you predicted the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
So do you want to tell me a little bit about that? Okay,
yeah.
Tell me when. Like I said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but tell me a little bit about that because that's craziness. And, well, you go on and then I'm going to drop in some interesting facts that you told me that I think are wild to know.
Right. Well, this particular system of astrology masters the art of predicting these types of things. And I started giving seminars in 2005 about 2020. And so I did a seminar tour in 2005 specifically talking about 2020 being the beginning of the end of the age that we know. Eclipses are responsible for major calamities on this earth. Not Pluto, not Saturn. These planets move in a certain order all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How would you make a prediction about a pandemic? Well, the eclipse of December 25th of 2019, almost every single inner planet was conjunct in that eclipse.
And that's rare.
I'll tell you how rare it is here in a minute. That particular eclipse was so difficult and so challenging that years ago when I saw this eclipse coming, I started telling people we're either going to have a pandemic, a volcanic eruption that is so severe we can't breathe for a period of time normally, or a meteorite's going to hit the planet. Now,
Good Lord.
The eclipse, December 25th of 2019, was very similar to the eclipse of December of 1918, right before the pandemic. And how I was able to make the prediction was this eclipse has only happened a few times, once before the Black Plague, the other before the Spanish flu, the other one right here. So it was very simple to make this prediction that a pandemic was coming. So strongly did I believe it was getting ready to happen. 2019, I started reminding people publicly, and a couple articles are written about me predicting a pandemic in 2020 between January and April.
Which is right on the money. Okay, so that was one of the things I was going to bring up. I thought that was incredible when you told me about the past plagues and how it was almost, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, those other plagues and the planetary alignments happened in the years that were 20s, correct? Like 1920,
That's
1820,
correct.
which that's, and then of course, me being like the little internet sleuth that I am, Googled that immediately, and it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, not just the past 3. So I think that's kind of wild. And you probably have researched that, and maybe the internet's wrong, what I found, but even the fact that there were 3.
That's right. These particular the eclipses that created this one, I would have to say, and the one that created the Spanish flu and the Black Plague, these ones were unique to other alignments going on inside these eclipses. But yes, there have been other pandemics that kind of reoccur like every 100 years. This one is going to stand out in history like the Spanish flu did and the Black Plague. This one will stand out.
Interesting.
Because of the alignments of it. Yep.
Huh. And we can say that we experienced it, which is kind of a crazy thing in your lifetime to say that you've experienced. So yes, I think that was really impressive. And then the other thing I was going to drop in that I said, some of the other fun facts that you said, is you were actually predicting weeks that there would be spikes. Like, how are you able to do that?
What you're going to have to do is the article, and on my Facebook page, let me tell you what I predicted in 2020. And by the way, I'm so busy as an astrologer dealing with human beings and people and readings, I generally don't have years where I branch off and make a bunch of public predictions. I often don't even have time for that.
No, I know.
But
you're very hard to book.
You can verify the pandemic, the riots I predicted in June.
Yes.
The eclipses in June, the first one on June 2nd. Those riots started right with that eclipse in June because the god Prometheus was going to take over the summer due to eclipses, and Prometheus is the god of humanity. So I said humanitarian crisis.
Oh, my God.
I didn't use the word riots. I used humanitarian crisis in June.
And it could not have been more of a humanitarian cause, or...
That's correct.
It couldn't have been.
Meaning, there's where the mystery comes in, is like, I knew that we were going to have some humanitarian crisis, but when the, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter debate started, now kind of battle broke out, I didn't know that specific stuff.
Sure. There's
stuff that's left to the mystery of it, but you're able to go, you know what, humanitarian crisis is going to start in June. Then I predicted the fires. And this one was by the one I predicted on the actual day. Most of them I predict on the month. This one I predict on the day. I said August 16th. In real astrology, the sun goes into Leo on August 16th.
Correct. Yes,
and
I do know that.
Day,
I have a Leo.
A fire sign. Then Mars went into Aries, another fire sign in real astrology, at the same time, at the same minute. So having the sun go into Leo, fire, Mars go into Aries, fire, their own signs. I said record-breaking heat, record-breaking fires. And then LA got to 120 that week. I predicted it on the date of August 16th, and that was the date that the lightning started spreading everywhere, creating those fires.
Yes.
And that one was a prediction on the actual day.
I was actually in LA on August 16th, and it was hot as hell.
It went to 120. It was hot.
Yeah.
I live in Joshua Tree, and it was hotter in Los Angeles than it was here in Joshua Tree.
Wow.
And then the spikes. In real astrology, this is not in Western. I'm going to explain that again here in a minute, because I'm going to explain why this mistake happened. We're using wrong astrology in the West. But when Mars goes into Pisces in real astrology, I was able to predict the spikes through the constellation Pisces, because Pisces rules over the medical industry. And Mars rules over frustration and agitation. So every time Mars went in and out of Pisces this year, very unusual, it went retrograde twice inside and outside of Pisces. I knew the spikes would happen when Mars was in Pisces, because it means the medical field would get frustrated by an event taking place around it.
Got it.
So the spikes I predicted through Mars going through Pisces.
That is so...
Which is not happening in Western astrology at all.
Right.
Mars is in a totally other sign at that point. So Mars in Pisces was responsible for these spikes. And when the when the United States went into lockdown was on March 14th, the day the sun went into Pisces. That was so Pisces, and the focus this year on Pisces is the reason why the emotions were so difficult this year. There was so much emotional turmoil while we're having this pandemic all at the same time.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, very fascinating. So are you able to sleep at night? Because if I knew all of these things coming, I mean, I know some, but you really know a lot. Are you like, oh God, I am panicking? Or are you just sort of like, well, this is the way it is?
This was the high point of living in India. You know, I started going to India when I was 17 years old. And so you learn that this life that we're in is a Leela. It's just kind of a play of the divine, and we're just in it. And there have been years like this before. There was, I mean, to think that in the 1940s, there was a world war going on, and there was a Hitler on this planet going on.
True.
We, in astrology, we know ages like this exist. And so no, I mean, it's been hard personally. I mean, it's like I'm, you know, I am an astrologer. I'm also a touring sign musician, and so that having that shut down, and then I feel like I became a frontline worker this year of just the amount of work that came. Everybody that ever went to a seminar of mine when it heard me predicting the pandemic, I mean, from like 2005, everyone that heard my radio shows or read my articles that came out in 2019, all of them booked readings all at once, and that's why I'm booked until April right now.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're responsible for it.
Well, I mean, because you know what you're talking about. So really quickly, before we get into 2021, I just have to ask this question because it's something I really think about. Have you always been drawn to the stars and astrology, or how did you become an astrologer? What prompted that in you?
Oh, this is going to be a really funny answer. Yeah, I've always been interested in astrology, but I was a bass player when I was in high school in a band that was signed, and we were on tour opening for the Counting Crows in the 90s.
Okay.
And
wow, that's really great.
Goes into the
like
story.
The Counting Crows in the 90s.
I would give readings as a touring musician for beer money, literally on the side. People would come out and give these readings. It was hysterical. Adam from the Counting Crows saw me giving readings, and he said, you know what, I'm dating someone, and I know she would love you to give her reading. And that was Courtney Cox. And I said to her something that was so utterly profound, that was personal, mixed in also with another one saying, you will be a household name in the next year. She had already booked friends, but was not allowed to tell a single person. So when I told her that she was going to become a household name, she looked at me and said, I can't tell you who, but someone just booked me for a show and just told me last week I was going to be a household name.
Wow.
And she launched my career when I was on tour in a band. And
wow.
It was actually really frustrating for me at that time because my head was so into music and astrology was a side thing.
Sure.
And then on tour, I developed a health issue that was severe. And my diagnosis was severe. And that led me to go to India. Now in India, while I was there going through this transformation of healing, is when I realized this whole inaccuracy with Western astrology and it not actually being a real science within India. And that's when I started pushing together and pulling together this system of astrology that I am now. And have I always been fascinated by astrology? By birth. Music and astrology are the only two things, and I've done them my entire life so far.
Isn't it funny how, because both of those things, I would say, if you would say to, and I'm just being very general, but like the common person, like I'm interested in astrology and music, they would say, get a real job. You know, like that seems like something that people would say. And isn't it funny how life works out that those are exactly the things that you're passionate about and you've been able to make a career out of it? So I love that.
That's the funny thing is I tell people, if you want it, don't worry about manifesting. If you're passionate and confident about what you do, you'll make a living.
Yep.
And those two things are mandatory. And so these are the two things I've been passionate about my whole life. And oddly enough, I'm also a sign musician. I have a totally different name, and you can't even research it. It's another name entirely. But I've been in a very successful touring band. Even my music project was in 2 movies last year, one with Michael Madsen and everything. I don't bring it up at all, but they've both been these nice, successful things in my life, and I've never struggled with either one of them.
Yeah.
Since the day they started.
I was just going to say,
at the very, very beginning.
You're passionate about it.
That's correct. I have astrology, especially this particular system, has proved itself to me in such a way that it's validated my connection to the divine. And even if by chance I decided to go on tour and not give readings anymore, I would still spend my life dedicated to astrology. It's such a powerful spiritual experience, and It has taught me some incredible spiritual lessons that are just absolutely amazing.
I love that. I do. So what you're saying to me, though, is that I should take everything you told me for myself for 2021 and really listen to it because it's true. I'm just teasing.
And real quick, I want to just, my answer with that is yes, but I want to stress one thing, why we use Western astrology. And then just real quickly, if possible, move on from that.
Yeah, sure.
Catholicism created Western astrology so you wouldn't use the stars in the sky anymore. And this is just real quick. There was an astrologer named Hipparchus. He was Greek and Egyptian. He was the greatest astrologer of all time. And people have to know this. Astronomy and astrology were the same science up until 400 years ago. And nor was there ever talk of two different systems. There's only one zodiac in the sky. We use it. Western astrology doesn't. Hipparchus was the greatest guru of astrology ever. He invented what we call the precession of the equinox. The stars in the sky move 1 degree every 72 years. That's called the precession of the equinox. And by the way, that's what governs our ages. Having planets, Western astrology saying all these planets are going to Aquarius, we're having the age of Aquarius, when they said that also in the 60s as well, that's completely not real. The stars in the sky and the movement of of the stars is the precession of the equinox, and it creates the ages that we're in. Hipparchus, this astrologer, mastered this, which is unbelievable because it's impossible to do in one lifetime because the stars move so slow.
Oh, okay.
He knew about this precession. He was considered an avatar of astrology. His student was Claudius Ptolemy, the godfather of Western astrology. So why would Ptolemy disregard the greatest astrologer of all time in his information? Well, Claudius Ptolemy became Catholic in his lifetime. Catholicism went right after him. When Catholicism was new, they're like, if we get Claudius Ptolemy to become Catholic, we will own astrology entirely. So they converted Claudius Ptolemy, and then they gave him the job to create anti-divination laws, making astrology illegal. And then they put out this seasonal calendar. The first day of Aries is the first day of spring. That used to be our January 1st, and it should be our January 1st, the first day of Aries. That's the first day of spring.
Okay.
The first day of Aries is the first day of spring, and it's just the 4 equinoxes dissected into 12 parts. That's a calendar.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with the stars in the sky. So Claudius Ptolemy put the calendar on top of the zodiac so people would not use his guru's teachings anymore. And if you don't think that 2,000 years later we would still be using a calendar as opposed to stars in the sky, we're also still celebrating, Christ's resurrection with rabbits, because that was Easter. That was Ishtar. That was her day of fertility. They put Christ's resurrection on top of it, so we wouldn't even celebrate that anymore. And we're still celebrating Christ's resurrection on Ishtar, Easter. So all these things Catholicism did was to get rid of paganism, so we wouldn't use old paganism anymore, including astrology. And we're still using all that today. Western astrology is the old calendar of the northern hemisphere. It has nothing to do with the stars in the sky, and it cannot predict ages like the age of Aquarius. We can. That movement in the stars is the precession. We are not in the age of Aquarius yet. It will happen in our next life, not this one.
Oh, our next life. I was actually going to say, are we in the age of Aquarius? But that really does...
2070 is when it starts.
Well, I will be 93. I might miss it.
We'll see it, but it's for the next generation. We will, and 2020, by the way, to 2070 is the end of the age that we're in, and it's another reason why I predicted calamities to start in 2020, because we'd start the beginning of the moving into that age now, but it will take many, many years to get there.
Okay, so wait. So are you saying the next 50 years are going to be full of calamity?
Yes and no. It's going to be a mixture of calamities and consciousness growing together. And I do believe that, weather transitions are going to be significant in our lifetime. But does that mean we're not going to have good years? No, there's some outstanding years coming, by the way. I think we're going to have some of our best years even inside of this as we get closer to this new age, as consciousness rises and we find more joy in our lives. I definitely think that we have good. So, yes, we have good ages coming.
Great.
Even though we are still going to witness the end of this age at the same time.
Okay. Well, I think this is a perfect segue into what you feel 2021 is going to be like for all of us.
2021 is huge because we have Pluto going into Capricorn on December 31st, like the day before. Now, how big is that alignment? It lasts for 20 years. It stays there till 2040.
Oh, wow.
It's a major alignment. And the message of Pluto and Capricorn, getting into more or less the spiritual elements of it. There are physical elements of it that are going to happen, but the spiritual element is you have to do what you want in life. Pluto is exalted in Capricorn, according to Asterian astrology.
Okay.
And Capricorn is dharma, it's work, our responsibilities. But Pluto is about being completely, utterly natural with who you are, and he strips away all the false veils, so we become natural with who we are. So people aren't going to run to careers to make money anymore. They're going to just do what they are the most natural in doing. Pluto in Capricorn, which 2020 is about laying this down, which will indicate some financial disturbances coming next year, where people will have to choose careers based upon what they want and what they desire, not out of what makes the most money for them, because our whole dynamic and how we deal with money is going to change next year. And so the message of Pluto in Capricorn, and it's going to be strong next year, is do what you feel you're the strongest in, or do what you feel you have the most passionate about. Most people don't. They start to get involved in work that helps them pay their bills. They don't feel passionate about what they do, and then they dry up in life. The universe is saying you can't choose that route anymore. You have to choose what is the most natural for you. That's the message of Pluto in Capricorn.
I love that. And I think that kind of goes back to what we were saying about your life, is that it's funny that, you know, the two things you were most passionate about have brought you great success and satisfaction. And I work with a lot of young people, mostly young women, college age, going into their early adulthood. And that's a question I get all the time, often. Everyone is always like, how do I know that this is the right choice? But I guess the answer to that is you have to do what you love and the rest will fall into place. So I can say...
And there is an art form in knowing what that is. There are people that really generally don't know, and that's where astrology, and this is, if you were to contact me for a reading, which you have, my first reading is centered around what you're the most natural in. And this is why I believe Western astrology is an actual spiritual crime, because people end up aligning with signs that they're not, when our job is to help people become who they are. Like, I'm a good example. I'm born May 8th. And so, you know, when I was young, I did get into Western astrology early. I have Taurus tattooed on my arm.
I was just going to say, you're a Taurus.
India, right, and I go to India, and the first day of my course in India, my training there, my guru said, when were you born? I said, May. He goes, oh, you're an Aries. You're a type of Aries called a Bharani. Which I call Hades. And I'm like, oh, no, wait a minute. I'm Taurus, not Aries. Like, what is this guy doing? And he said, I'm going to do something, because there's like 30 Westerners in my class. He goes, I'm giving all 30 of you guys pamphlets of the 12 signs. I've removed the names of the signs. I've mixed up the order of them and used a thesaurus to change words. I want you to pick the sign you feel like you're the most. No one has ever picked their Western sun sign. This is why he did that.
Interesting.
Because everybody thinks they're their sun sign. Oh, I'm so this, I'm so that. We identify with parts of these things we read, and so we believe that we're that. I picked Aquarius on that day, and his job was saying, you don't know you're Taurus. You think you are. Now when I look back and I think about the practical, conservative, earthly Taurus, man, I have never been that.
Okay.
Aries, bold. I mean, I was an athlete in high school. Like, even the type of music I did was very edgy, and my spiritual path I chose is about overcoming fear. I worship the goddess Kali, the Dark Mother, or Hecate in the West, and she's about confronting your fear and overcoming them. It's the path of courage, as we call it, and Aries is about courage and bravery. And so now when I read Aries, it's like perfectly aligned with who I am. Taurus, who you couldn't have convinced me that I wasn't a Taurus until I went to India. I can't even believe I even identified with practical, conservative, earthly, but I did.
Interesting.
But we create these funny scenarios. Like my client right before you is a really good example. She was like, oh, I'm not a type of Scorpio. I got to be a Sagittarius. And I'm like, well, what makes you so sure you're a Sagittarius? She says, because I've traveled through work. I'm like, well, I've been to India 34 times. I didn't know we had to be a Sagittarius to travel. You know, I guess we do. These are the slight identifications that we relate to. The bigger picture is we're way bigger than these signs, by the way. So I want to really throw that out there. What real astrology is, and the level of individualism we have 3 types of Leos. We have 3 types of Virgos. And they're so different from one another, we don't even believe we can all call them Leos or Virgos. There's a specific individual imprint you have, and it absolutely is not going to be captured through a sign that everyone born your month is in the first place.
Agreed.
We create a type of individualism in the system that is so far superior, I do want those 27 signs that are pre-system to be public, because it allows you to see this really unique version of yourself that Western astrology could never capture anyways, but it's the coffee table talk. And also Western astrology succeeds because astrologers don't want to admit they've been wrong their whole life.
Well, sure.
And there's been one case of one well-known, I'm not going to use his name, Western astrologer who did shift to this and lost his entire clientele. And he had it for over 30 years. And because that happens, you're not going to get other astrologers out there saying, oh, we're going to just adapt to a new system, because they have to eventually admit they've been wrong their whole life, and nobody wants to do that.
Well, no one wants to do that. I have a quick little thing before we get into more 2021. And this was a reading you did. Both of my children had you do readings for them. And something that you said about my younger daughter, who's Clara, she's 11, that I almost fell off of my chair. You had talked about how, and I don't remember exactly like what it ruled in her, but you said that she identified with the star Persephone. And I stopped and I said, oh my God, like Clara at 10 dressed up as Persephone for Halloween because she felt like this connection to that story from all of the Greek astrology or Greek mythology that she had read in school. And I was like, that's kind of weird. So I thought that was kind of...
Well, here's how to elaborate on that real quick. In this system, the belief is that a specific god had chose you to be born under their sign because they were going to do their work through you, and you're going to have characteristics of those deities. I mean, when I realized I was a Hades, the other side of Persephone,
sure,
I cannot explain the alignment that had even more than Aries with me. Like, okay, I was someone that was interested in dark music when I was young. Even the band I was touring with was a darker project. A lot of the music I do is really edgy, very shadow work, and shadow work is my favorite type of work with people, even in astrology, is let's look at those things that you don't want to look at. Let's go there, and let's make it fun and comfortable, and let's learn about who we are. All that is Hades. And so we learn about our true selves through real astrology. And so her connecting to Persephone, that is, we believe that Persephone chose your daughter to be born under her sign to do work through her. So that is highly intuitive for your daughter.
Right. She's 10. And that's what I mean, it was insane to hear that because I was like, what? Like I had never even heard Persephone as a star. And, I just knew it from Greek mythology. But those are the types of things that I'm saying, like things that you could never make up. Imagine like when I spoke to you or you spoke to Chloe or you spoke to Clara, it's really fascinating to hear and how it aligns with who we are. So I do think that's really interesting. But let's get back to 2021 because I feel like everyone after the year 2020 wants to hear some positivity. So interesting that we're going to now shift as a whole, which when you were talking about people doing things that they love more than just being money driven, I honestly feel that the younger generation that like my children are a part of, I've always felt like that generation is a little bit more in that vein already. So I'm not surprised to hear this.
Yeah, we're going to retrain our way of thinking about what our careers are and what they represent. Your career is an extension of your inner self. It's not something you do to go pay your bills, And so Pluto in Capricorn is going to realign us with the word Dharma. Dharma means your purpose, your highest knowledge coming forth. And Pluto is exalted in Capricorn. And boy, is that being felt already. It did peak into Capricorn early in 2020, right when the pandemic started to really spread. That was through Pluto taking that big eclipse in December and expanding a little bit further. And his message in 2020 was, I don't want you to know what next week is going to look like. You're going to live in the moment. That's it. That's all I'm going to give you. That's Pluto. He teaches the law of detachment. He doesn't give a lot. He's like, I don't care about results. I care about the spiritual process. So I'm not going to show you what next week's going to be like. So we had to kind of live in that in 2020. That's going to shift when Pluto starts to gain more power in Capricorn throughout the year, where people are just going to be aligning with who they are. I also do believe this is going to shift the way how we handle money on this planet.
Okay.
I believe this pandemic is a process of that. Now, one quick thing I want to address, because it's going to be on people's minds, when are we out of all this stuff that's going on now? We are moving out of Mars and Pisces right now. It's going to take us a few months to clean out what is going on this planet. So April is the month I'm looking at till we start to kind of go back to not the old, but that new norm. And I am someone that was telling people last year, you can call 2020 a reset button if you want, but it's 2021. This year of 2020 to me was a year of the mass cleanse.
Okay.
Karmically, deep inner cleans. Next year is going to be that reset button where you're able to reset and go, let's start all over again. And let's move in the direction that is the most natural for us.
Well, that sounds
is Pluto
positive.
and Capricorn. Yep.
That sounds very positive. So when you say we're going to identify or our relationship with money is going to be different, can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean? Because I'm sure that's going to be a question people have.
Well, Pluto is not about a financial reward, even though his name in Rome means wealth. Pluto means wealth. And so having him exalted means he is going to retrain people's thinking that your path to wealth is through your passion, not through what looks good on paper.
Okay.
And so those changes are going to happen. But I think that, this pandemic is going to still press some financial problems that we're going to run into. Look at the amount of money that the government is throwing out there for this pandemic. We're going to have to pay for that. Mm-hmm. So not even getting into astrology, just looking at things from just a practical level, you can see how next year is going to be retraining how we handle money in general. And I even think individually, people are going to be put in positions of learning to handle their money and their financially differently throughout 2021. People are going to change the relationship to money. And I think that's going to have some global elements to it that I think that we're going to kind of reshape how we deal with money as even a planet collectively throughout 2021.
Okay. Well, that doesn't sound terrible because I know the minute you say
money.
Not,
and also, like you said, I'm not here to bring bad news. I will tell you 2021, especially after the spring, is going to be significantly better than what we just experienced. And I also want to reiterate, if you look at these ages we've had in the past, the pandemic, World War II, Vietnam, the entertainment world just explodes after this. I mean, when we start to get out of this pandemic, people are going to want to party, have a good time. I do see good times coming here. Yet, I do believe that we're going to be more focused on our natural selves. And I think a lot of people were shaken up through this experience spiritually, which is also Pluto's job, is to get you to confront your fear and look at it consciously. We've looked at some deep fears around death, dying, illness, all these Pluto-related things. We've looked at these things. And because we are looking at them, that's our shadow self. Where our fears are is where the shadow is. We've looked at them, so we're going to be freer next year. I think we're going to have less anxiety. I don't think we're going to be so concerned about the result of things because we realize that the moment is really all we have, even in a world that looks much nicer next year than this year did. Mm-hmm. We still are going to feel the leftover of let's live in the moment.
And be more appreciative of what we have in the moment.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. All right. Well,
only good can come out of this situation after we're done with this actual pandemic. Then I believe we'll see the positive results of what just happened.
Well, good. We earned it. We deserve it, I feel. Ish. Yep. Okay. Any other major things that stand out to you for 2021? I love so far. It sounds like a positive year. Anything fun or anything super outstanding that we need to really just keep an eye on? Or is it all just that reset button now?
If we were going to talk about some just slightly negative elements, we are going to be looking at weather. We are going to be looking at natural disasters, types of natural disasters that might even be new. What we saw with the weather shifting around, I think, is going to continue. And Pluto, being exalted in Capricorn, is going to exalt some countries' desire for power. And so I think that we can run into some political hostility. I'm not talking about a war, but I think that the way we also, collectively work with each other from country to country is going to have to be changed. Now, this is where I think Biden coming in is really positive. And I'm so happy we're not dealing with the other result, which, by the way, for people that are on my Facebook page, saw me predict Biden to win, but to lose night one severely. And I predicted that months before because on the November 3rd, the election night, Trump had his moon going through his sign Prometheus. So I said openly on several TV stations and radio stations that if it closes on November 3rd, Trump's going to win. But I said at 3 a.m., it leaves Trump's 10th house and then conjuncts Mercury, which is in his 11th house, and there's a god Typhon, the god of loss there. I said Trump would start losing on November 4th at 3 a.m. California time.
Wow.
And lose from that point onward. That's how specific this system was.
Wow.
And so I had to remind my clients that were hoping that Biden won office. I had to remind them, don't worry, he's going to lose night one and then win from the rest point on. And so I even made that prediction far beforehand that Biden would win but lose night one severely. due to that. But nevertheless, Biden, I think, is going to handle the global situation much better, which I believe we could have avoided a third world war, because I think Trump, if he was to stay, would have actually created more calamity there and more negativity and more problems there. Biden, I think, will find a solution. So I think it's really good to have going into the next age.
That's good to hear.
I mean, Pluto and Capricorn age, that's a 20-year cycle.
That's a 20-year. Okay. Well, just quickly before you finish up, I just want to mention that if you want to follow along on Jade's Facebook page, it's facebook.com/Asterian Astrology. And that's ASTERIAN astrology. Just because you said you make predictions on your Facebook page and you predicted the election so dead on, I know people are just stopping right now going like, wait, what's his Facebook page? And I will share that link in the show notes, and we'll also wrap it up at the end. We'll give you that link again, but just in case you want to know now.
Yep, AsterianAstrology.com is the other. That's the best place to get a hold of me.
Yes, AsterianAstrology.com is where people can book you. If after April, though, I feel like, right?
Yeah, I'm booked until the middle of April right now.
Rightfully so. I'm so lucky, or I'm so happy that I reached out to you months ago and I was like, wait, I want to talk to you at the end of the year. And you're like, I'm really booked. And I'm like, no, I have appointments. So I was happy for that I got in, because I was excited to hear what's coming for us in 2021.
And this is probably going to be one of my last shows making predictions, because making public predictions is the reason why I'm booked so far out. I need to get a hold of my business, my clientele. It's getting so far out there that people don't want to wait. So This will probably be my last show like this in a while.
Oh, well, I'm so glad it's us. So thank you so much for coming. Anything else you want to just drop in about 2021? I mean, if nothing, if we've covered the major things, that's fine. But if there's anything, because I know I cut you off, that you feel is important to tell us, I would love to hear.
Well, I do believe those are the most powerful messages of 2021. Do what you want. Do what feels right. Going towards the path that people have been choosing, what makes the most money, what does that. None of those things are going to produce the results that they want. It's all about living in the moment, enjoying life, appreciating things. Pluto being exalted is going to be intense, but being someone like myself who's born under his star Hades, if we can live in the moment, let go of results, I think, and just kind of appreciate what we have, we create the foundation for a new life entirely that I think is going to be very productive, and I see a lot of good coming from this. But the concerns are political power, certain countries reaching out, wanting a little bit more, tension building because of things of that nature. I do think there are going to still be some financial problems that some of them could even be significant as we start to repair from this year. But outside of that, I do believe the entertainment business is going to explode when we're done with this pandemic, and will be a place where people kind of reside for their joy, because we just felt a life without it, and how challenging it is to not have those things in our world. And so I think certain industries are going to explode next year,
of course,
because of this.
Well, I mean, you couldn't be more accurate, because that was the big thing during the pandemic. Everyone was so desperate for anything. We didn't realize how we just took entertainment for granted. And that's something that you're just like, well, it's there and it's not that important, but it is. It really is. Yeah. You need joy in your life, and a lot of times. So what I'm hearing is that at the end of 2019, everyone posted memes that 2020 was going to look like a scene from The Great Gatsby. So maybe 2021 moving forward will be a little bit more Gatsby-esque instead of Hunger Games. That's what I'm hoping.
Agreed.
All right, yeah. Great. Love that. All right, Jade. Well, again, I can't thank you enough. I love your insight. I know my listeners are going to be obsessed with this. So again, follow along on Jade's Facebook page. It's Asterian Astrology, my apologies, .com, or facebook.com/Asterian Astrology. And again, I will put that in there, and people can reach out and try to book you for their own individual readings as well, correct?
That's correct.
And they're amazing. They really are. And you will learn a lot about yourself. So I love it. I did it for myself and my kids. And now I have I actually do 2 annual readings with you. That's my individual year coming, and then how the new year will affect me. Is that how we say them correctly?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And it's interesting because they're different, but they're sort of there's underlying threads that are similar, but they are different. It was really interesting to hear.
Yes, I was so happy we were able to do that, and how timely was it that we were able to do it this time of the year. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm going to also plug this one everywhere as my final show for this particular year. So I'm excited you brought me on.
Yeah, I did too. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be talking. I will be reaching out because I have some questions about myself. And happy 2021.
Happy 2021 to you as well.
All right. Bye. Or I should just end on a thank you. Thank you, Jade. You're obsessed now, right? Totally. I think he is so fascinating. So if you want to check out Jade, go to asterianastrology.com. I know you can book a reading, but he also gives predictions on facebook.com/AsterianAstrology. I will drop that in the show notes, but how wild is it? But also, how excited are you what he was saying about 2021? I think that's really interesting that this is the fresh start. 2020 was the reset button. And I can see that. Like, I totally can see that. So excited for 2021. I hope you are too. And I hope you loved that guest. Let me know if you want to see more guests like that. Like, what are you interested in? So I would love to hear if you go to my Instagram, which is at Christy's Couch. Drop me a DM. Tell me what you want to hear. Who do you want me to talk to? I would love to hear your suggestions because this show's really for you. And also, it's now time for my favorite part of Christy's Couch, and that's where I take your questions and dole out all of my unqualified advice. And if you have a question you want me to answer, just DM me at Christy's Couch. Again, I will answer them because this is a lot of fun for me. So we're going to get to today's questions, and they are juicy. I mean, they are juicy. You guys, some of these are so obvious, but I get it. When you're living in the moment, it's hard to see. But let's read through this first one, and then let's talk about it. So here's what it says. It says, in the past, my boyfriend has lied a lot. Okay, right there, please. Told me he sold the vape he had before we got together because I said I really didn't want him to use it. Good, vapes kill. But he didn't, and he's still using it around his friends. Red flag number 1. Got sent naked photos from a girl. She was telling him how she started an OnlyFans account and then sent him photos, but he saved them on Snapchat instead of deleting them and saying something like, I have a girlfriend. Please don't send those. Okay. And he also just would always not even think about inviting me to parties as a +1 where we had many mutual friends. I've somewhat forgiven him. We've basically gotten through it, and I've tried to forget, but I just feel because of COVID, we can't see each other really, and I don't feel close anymore. And I just keep telling myself that I don't know if I can be in a relationship. We've dated for a year. I'm very busy with school and a hard worker, and he just slacks so much and doesn't do anything for himself. And it's so frustrating because I feel like he's never going to be independent and put in the same amount of effort I do. I've had this feeling for a while that I want to break up. Girl, all of these things are so many red flags. I mean, there's like 49 red flags here. This guy is awful. He's a dirtbag. We need to get rid of him quickly, especially because you said you're a hard worker and he slacks and he doesn't do anything for himself and he's never going to be independent. No, he's not. Because if this is how he acts at the beginning of a relationship, look, at the beginning of a relationship, we're usually putting on our best face. If this is his best face, your future with him is dismal. So we need to get out of this. I mean, again, he's a liar. He saves naked photos from another girl. Okay. That right there, I mean, that's such a deal breaker. But I mean, you know that. You just need somebody to tell you it's time to break up. I'm here to tell you it's time to break up. And then once you get a little distance from this guy, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, oh my God, what did I do? Why did I waste my time? What a big fat loser. I'm telling you, big fat loser. Let's just get rid of him, move on. You'll be so much better. You deserve better. Like, what do you want from a relationship? And don't settle for anything less. I assure you, when you made like your Prince Charming dream guy list, it didn't include lying, naked chicks, and not inviting you to a party. Get out of here. You deserve way better. Okay, the second question. My college roommate started out great, but then it got really weird, and I'm not sure why. Like, they put my toothbrush in the toilet. I have no words for this. Luckily, I found out before I used it. Yes, I would say that's lucky. But when I asked them about, the only reason they could give me was because I didn't invite them out every time I went out. I don't feel like it's unreasonable to want to spend time with other friends and have time away from them, but maybe I'm wrong. Girl, you are not wrong. You have the right to hang out with whoever you want and diversify. Like, diversify your friend portfolio. You don't always have to be with the same people. They also tracked me obsessively throughout the day and got angry when I turned off my location because I was uncomfortable with that. And that kept saying a lot of weird secrets, like the fact that one of them dropped her sorority was a secret for 2 weeks until I found out from someone else. They also go into my drawers and use my things when I'm not there, which is totally fine if they just texted me and asked, but I don't know. Let me know if you have any advice. Okay. These roommates sound, first of all, like they're torturing you. They're absolutely torturing you. These are terrible roommates, and you need to move. I know you can't move in the middle of a school semester or what have you, but next year when they say, like, should we live together? The answer is a hard no. And also, this is harassment, and you sound like you're apologizing for their behavior. Fuck that. These girls are awful. I mean, the fact that they put your toothbrush in a toilet because you didn't invite them out, go away. These are terrible, mean girls, and I'm so sorry that you live with them. It's not totally fine. It's not. You deserve to be treated better. You're a human being, and they're not treating you like a human, let alone a friend. And listen, why are they tracking you on location services? Like, I don't get it. Okay, I will also say this. I understand that sometimes people use location services as a safety precaution. Like, I got so much shit on the internet because I made some jokes that I use Life 360 on my kids, and I said that about Chloe. And the internet blew up that, like, why are you tracking your daughter? I'm not tracking my daughter. I have location services turned on because she lives almost 3,000 miles away. And if something happens to her that I'm not aware of because I'm not talking to her every day, we need to know. Like, we need to be able to say, like, this is the last place she was. It's not like I sit here and I watch her car drive down the street. It's like, if there was an emergency, we need to know those things. So for all of you out there who think I, like, track Chloe, that isn't the case. So settle down. Don't at me. Go away. It's simply for a safety measure. And if you don't understand that, then don't listen to me or don't follow me or don't talk to me. I mean, look, I will always put my kids' safety first. But in this case, this sounds like these people are just harassing you. So I don't know if this is getting to the point where you can just start to separate yourself. I mean, just separate yourself. I wouldn't be at the apartment as much as humanly possible until you can move out. And, I'm so sorry. This is cruel and mean girl behavior. You can send them my way. I'll put them in their place. Okay, our last question today is, my boyfriend was caught on Tinder twice and matched with my sorority sister. We want to be together, but I have major trust issues and don't know how to build trust. You don't want to be together. I mean, you might want to be with him, but he does not want to be with you. I know that's hard to hear because, you love each other and he's your boyfriend, but anybody who loves you isn't on Tinder. Like, they're looking for the grass is greener situation. Get rid of him. You deserve better. That's all you need to know. Okay. That's it for all of my unqualified mom advice. I hope that it helped. And if you have something that you want me to answer, just DM me at Christy's Couch. Follow along on Instagram. Please rate, review, and subscribe this podcast. I mean, this is like my little passion project, and anything you can do to help. I mean, just a simple review or a subscribe helps me a ton, and I really appreciate it. Let me know who else you want me to talk to. I would love to hear your feedback, and have an amazing week. See you next time. Bye.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing whilst you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. Then cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy podcast on your podcast app.